So I was recently talking to a friend about this subject, and she brought up something that I couldn't dismiss, and I think it's really interesting and probably true. And that is that we have ancestral knowledge, that there's just information that we're born with, and through so now I'm just talking my own ideas on this subject through propaganda, fake history, they try to not tell us our real history. However, I agree that we probably have an intuition or an understanding about our ancestors, about what happened in their life, gets passed down whether you're taught it or not, in the same way that animals, so we're even above animals. So if this happens for animals, I think that this is a reason why it's probably true that we do have ancestral knowledge that is just in us from our ancestors, in the same way that animals don't need to be taught things. They can, and I believe that there are examples where if a parent learns something, it just automatically can get passed on to the child. Well, I think that we have some intuition about Tartaria, and I think that maybe it's that intuition that speaks to us when we're being fed the BS about history that says that doesn't sound right, or when we look at the Victorian era photos and we're like, that looks weird, or when you see an airship and you and it appeals to you in some way. And I do think that that could be because our ancestors used airships, so we could have an appeal to that. And so how this fits in with Tartaria, just a few things that I want to say. This has just been on my mind. And I have a feeling that the public understanding of historical resets, I see people talk about it in just the most unexpected places, people mentioning historical resets. It's the cat's out of the bag. And I think it's just so obvious when it's presented. It's one of those truths that when somebody's put it out there, you can't put it back away. It makes so many things make sense when you look at history through the lens of historical resets and Freemasonry inheriting. When you understand that every time there's a historical reset, there's this huge inheritance and land grab, and they're all looking like thugs in the beginning, and I could go on and on. Anyways, let's keep it to the subject that I want to talk about today. Just two things: balloons and pigeons. We'll get to that. So balloons, I think it was the idea that I had about balloons, and this gets into technology. Technology is what we have, what's given to us, and low tech, high tech. A lot of times there's bias there, and today we think that what we have is the most technologically advanced. But something like a balloon, people automatically assume that that has to be lower tech than something like an airplane. But the thought that came to my mind is, well, in these cities, in my mind, Tartaria, these cities were once inhabited by a culture so far ahead of what we have today. And so things about the balloons, people, well, they're slow and they don't care. They lived lives of ease, and the technology that they had was used to actually make life better. They believed in the opposite of things like planned obsolescence, and they built things to last. And they used technology to free the people from being enslaved. People weren't slaves. They had all the free time in the world to learn to play instruments, to learn to paint amazingly well. There was no concern about the rat race in the society. And so the fact that balloons are slower, it didn't matter. So to get to the point, I think it's a noise thing. I think that the cities, I think that it was probably legislation. They probably had legislation that said no airplanes in the cities, and you had to use balloons because it keeps the noise pollution down. And so I don't think it's an inferior tech thing, or that they didn't have airplanes. I think that airplane travel was only used outside of the main cities because of ordinances to keep the sound pollution down. Because these cities were just magnificent, amazing places to live, and they did not take their poop and throw it out into the sidewalk and stuff. Those are just the smear campaigns against the past, they got to sell you this story that the people in the past were wretched and low tech, and the opposite is true. They use technology to help mankind, and they weren't enslaved by 9 to 5 jobs, and it was so much better. Um, so the airship thing, I think that it was mandated. I think that they had to use airships in the cities and around them because they probably thought airplanes were loud and obnoxious. And they are. There's a flight path that goes right over my house, and it is obnoxious and constant throughout the day. So they have evolved past this. And I think that's just a truth that a lot of people have a hard time accepting, that what we have today is not the most advanced. There were societies that got to the where we are today, and they said we're not doing that. We're not doing planned obsolescence. We're not doing Facebook, Instagram. They probably canceled all that stuff. Had a renaissance, a rebirth, decided to use technology to make people's lives easier and to not be enslaved. But I mean, we're not allowed nice things anymore. But Tartaria was probably the last golden age, and I don't think we're ever going to go back to that. What else? Just something. This is just a random thing that I think about all the time. How it's obvious that United States of America in the previous reset, I think, was just like Western Europe. I don't think that there was any difference between the United States and Western Europe in the previous reset, or when Tartaria was alive and well, and life actually was a lot better. But who knows? I mean, maybe I'm looking at it through rose-colored glasses. Maybe they had the same issues, but I really do think that they lived a completely different life where they were able to just explore artistic pursuits for most of their life because they didn't live in this rat race. And anyways, I think we can feel it. I think that's that ancestral, that feeling that we get, that the Western Europe is this great force, I think comes from that golden era. And I was saying something, but I got sidetracked. I think it's pretty obvious that the United States basically was like Europe. Well, we had Spain on the west coast, was owned by Spain, and you also had what French influences in America. I don't think that it's the story that they tell us. I think that what makes a lot more sense is that it just used to be like Western Europe. There used to be a France in USA, in the Louisiana area. That just used to be like another extension of France in some previous reset. The pigeon thing. I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of pigeons recently, and it makes me think about carrier pigeons. And this is another thing where technology, they want you to think of things as being low tech, but how cool, how sophisticated of a society that uses things like pigeons for sending messages. And is that really low tech? Because it's actually, if you have you looked into carrier pigeons before, they need to take a pigeon that was born somewhere and then bring it to another place, because that pigeon will remember how to go home. And so that's how the carrier pigeons work. So it's it's something that takes a lot of setup. If you're going to set up a carrier pigeon route between two cities, well, you need to first raise pigeons in one city so they know, oh, this is my home. And then they take those pigeons to another big city. And again, this goes in with the silent thing. It's a silent technology, basically. Well, I mean, they're animals. They're not completely silent. I guess the point is, face value, you might look at something like a carrier pigeon and be like, oh, that's like a quirky thing. But in reality, it would need a very advanced society to decide to put in the effort to do something like this. And it matches what we see. It's a thing. The old cities, they have the building on the top of the roof, and there's some weird guy that raises pigeons there. And anyways, I don't want to ramble too much in this video. These are just ideas that I have and that I think about, that these are just little glimpses of a society that was just leagues beyond what we're at today. And that a pigeon isn't necessarily low tech. I don't have a picture here, but there's been really interesting like military applications of pigeons, using pigeons in like homing missiles, where they actually have a live pigeon inside of the missile that is making it guided. Very interesting. So just because someone uses a pigeon doesn't mean it's low tech. And apparently these passenger pigeons were so large in number, and maybe that has something to do with the reset. That after a reset, there were just all these pigeons around, and they just got wild, out of control in numbers because they were just some human bred thing. And I don't know. There were some other interesting things about pigeons, fancy pigeons. What this reminds me of is the tulip thing. It takes an advanced society to have a mania about something like breeding intricate tulips. You're probably not a rat race society if the whole society is crazing and breeding tulips. And it goes back to the very first slide. Although that, who knows if that's damage control or what, balloon mania. They want you to think, I guess, that that people just like go manic all of a sudden and something becomes widely popular. And maybe it's just that they were more advanced than us and they had all the time in the world to do artistic things. These fancy pigeons, I mean, this one in the bottom right looks exactly like a city pigeon. They are pretty birds. The reason pigeons are often thought of as lowly is because they're in the cities, but even that's really interesting that all the cities, all the old worldy Tartarian cities have these same looking pigeons. But they are beautiful birds. The iridescence, it's very interesting that comes off of them. And they are doves. People forget that it's a dove. But the fancy pigeons reminded me of, yeah, the tulips, but also fancy rats were a thing. The rats that were bred, which is that is kind of interesting because were they like sewer rats from the cities that people started to breed as pets? Rats do make pretty good pets though. I've had them and very personable. And I mean, I don't support pets anymore, but it's just a lot of work cleaning up after them. My life's hard enough. But these people, they had all the time in the world to do these things. This was their life passion. I think that it was just a huge society of people that got to just live nice, easy lives because the society functioned how it should, and they used technology how it should, pneumatic. I think that this was a pneumatic society. And it goes with Tesla too. Tesla was a post-reset guy who was trying to revive the greatness of Tartaria, and he wanted to bring it back. I think that that's pretty clear too. I think that's how the Tesla puzzle piece fits in, that he knew about it. He knew about Tartaria and the electric cities, and he wanted to bring that back. And that was not cut out for this reset. Nope, we get the rat race, reality TV reset, going to the moon, sending men to the moon reset. We don't get the steampunk reality, but I think steampunk is true, and I think that it's in our genetic material passed down from our ancestors. To go back to the beginning, I think there is something to that's why this stuff clicks as truth, is because it's within us. It's our ancestors lived through that, so it's imprinted on us. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. God bless everyone.